Да. Ох. Ну что, товарищи.
С Новым годом!
Одна секунда, 0-0.
С Новым годом!
С Новым счастьем!
О, тихо, тихо.
Все такой же лысый.
Our team had a lot of fun putting together Path of Exile's 3.15 expansion, and we've got a lot to share with you. Today's live stream is a busy one. We'll start by revealing the details of this expansion's new challenge.
О, нихуя себе! 19 камней.
Нихуя про PoE 2!
Покчамп? PoE рояль.
А что за PoE рояль?
Один раз был на 1 апреля в качестве шутки батл рояль в PoE.
Эксперимент, теперь это так называется, блядь.
Once our question and answer session with Ziggy D has concluded, and this event will run over the weekend. Anyway, there's a lot to discuss, so let's get started with the trailer for Path of Exile's next expansion.
Ну давай, хорошо.
Подожди, блядь, как шире сделать? Я что-то погать сейчас буду, походу.
Ой-ой-ой.
Там что-то, блядь, происходит.
Так, карта знакомая. Не понял.
О, взрывчатка.
Нихуя.
Блять, это хайст.
Чего? Блять, это Харвест. Провода. Почему это выглядит, как будто это PoE 2?
Они все намешали. Это хайст. Хайст с говном.
Ебать.
Ёбаный рот.
Ой-ой-ой-ой-ой.
Ой.
Так это новый скилл получается, окей. Вольтаксик Бёрст. Storm Rain. Манимор.
Сука.
О, Фрида.
Это Рин, который из Diablo 3.
Нихуя себе.
Это босс?
Нихуя себе. Экспедиции. Ё-моё.
А мне не нравится говно. Нет, ну в смысле, я буду...
Нарыгал.
Я буду играть, но они ничего нового не сделали, нет? Я не прав?
Сейчас посмотрим.
Long ago, Kalguran explorers came to Rayclast in the hope of colonizing it. Rayclast did what it does best, and they never returned. In the Expedition League, you will meet a group of Kalgurans who have set out on an expedition to investigate the fate of their ancestors and recover special ruined artifacts they left behind. The ancient Kalgurans underestimated the dangers of Rayclast, and this new expedition is no exception. They need your help to protect them from the undead that rise at their expedition sites. As you travel through Rayclast, you'll encounter the Kalgurans at sites they believe their ancestors attempted to settle in the past.
Эльф, мы если что, типа, через стрим Владоса смотрим, чтобы синхронайз было.
Раскопки, Сань.
Ну да, я понимаю.
You'll place a chain of explosives across the expedition site, carefully planning what each blast is going to unearth.
Блять,
ну понятно. Ты должен будешь,
Копай,
у тебя будет
да?
ограниченное количество взрывчатки, и ты должен менеджить, куда ты ее поставишь. Сука,
никто не будет этим заниматься. Я понял, все, Лига мертва. Никто не будет заниматься этим, да?
Помнишь,
они PoE рояль вернули нахуй, все, мне больше ничего не надо до этой игры, блять.
Никто не будет в это играть.
Просто помнишь, что я говорил? Что у них сидит какой-то пидорас, который думает, что менеджмент это весело.
В нашей игре, да, типа, ну мы замедлим искусственный геймплей.
Не про это, а про то, что они одну и ту же лигу уже 4-ю лигу пихают. Просто в разных обертках, и все такие, ого, нихуя себе, lesser older артефакт, ты видел? Ну, максимайз, понятно.
The ancient Kalgoran explorers built structures on Rayclust, and you may encounter remnants of these at excavation sites. These remnants have various modifiers on them that, when destroyed, apply to monsters and chests.
О, а вот и синтезис подъехал.
Remnants greatly increase drops, but have some very difficult modifiers like immune to physical
Кто, блядь, с
damage.
ГМП с
You
олдредом?
need to be very careful
В касте, ты чё, ёба?
chain your explosives through as they substantially ramp up the difficulty and rewards of the encounters.
Блядь.
Можно нормального
Тихо,
игрока на
по-фласски.
стримера?
Speaking of rewards, there's
Ой.
a lot of cool stuff to find. Alongside valuable equipment and currency items are Kalgoran
О,
artifacts
корону
and
перекрасили,
logbooks,
блядь.
which we'll talk about soon. The Kalgoran traders have made this expedition to Rayclast in order to recover their ruined artifacts. There are many different types of artifacts, and each of the Kalgorans is interested in a different set of them. With a
Нахуя?
unique way to trade them from you.
Как
This
мне...
expansion, we really wanted to play with the idea of having NPCs that want to trade with you in different ways. So we have themed their behaviors around the concepts of gambling,
А
bartering,
с ними еще,
upselling,
блядь,
and
можно
exchanging.
торговаться.
Let's meet the Kalgorans.
Finally,
Мне нравится
экзайлов.
челик.
Maintains a
Вот
positive
этот.
outlook as long as he can, but if you cross a line, his temper changes quickly. Huyan offers you items with unreasonably
Блядь,
high
это ритуал.
prices, but he's happy to haggle. You can always buy the item at the price he's offering, but if you offer a lower price, he might accept it, counteroffer, or withdraw the item entirely.
I really think you can do better.
He also occasionally sells currency items, so it's worthwhile keeping some of the artifacts he's looking for on hand just in case you see an opportunity.
Seems reasonable.
Grog is an average man pushed into Rayclast's dangers. He's helpful, concerned, and a bit fearful. He is very happy for you to do the fighting so that he can stay safe on the sidelines. He loves making deals and trying to upsell you. If you buy
Сука.
one of the items that Grog offers, he'll try to offer you a more complex deal where he improves the item via crafting. If you accept this deal, he'll try to upsell you again and again until you eventually walk away with your purchase.
Бля,
Охуенно.
не, ну это прикольно стоит. Это,
Да.
Это ультиматум,
Ruined artifacts to
пожалуйста.
cover the
ну
cost.
не совсем.
Because you don't
Да,
supply your own starter items with
идея
this
та
process
же.
and have to
Горе.
select an item with promise from the range that he offers, his incremental
Они
crafting
засунули
upgrades and price
менеджмент
will manage.
внутри менеджмента. Классно, да?
Не,
Пиздец.
вот эта хуйня
When
пока
in this
нравится.
cynical
Это
game,
Не, мне
прикольно,
нравится,
да.
depends
просто
on how hard you believe.
я просто против того,
Do you
что
really
новых
need to
идей
convince
нет.
yourself that you're going to get that headline?
Гремблер.
If you don't, it's your fault. Gwenin shows you a set of base
О,
types of unknown
ну
properties.
мы знаем, как
When you
Гэмбл
go
О.
to find
работает.
one, you'll receive a random
Я
item.
играл
Знакомо
в Диабло.
выглядит, да.
It could easily be a random magic item that you have no use for, but can sometimes be a valuable rare or unique item. It's probably
здесь такой базовый.
Valuable.
relevant to your character. Once you have exhausted all the items that interest you, it's possible to use a specific
Я уже
new
смотрю, как
currency
все
item to reroll
ледербелты
the
скупают у
gamble
нее.
into a set of new items of
Да.
your current level.
Ага, видишь, хотя бы
Sometimes
один
the
лазер
item
был.
shows up that is a lot more expensive than it would
есть.
otherwise be.
Чё за
When
щит
gambling on
впервые
this item
вижу?
has a higher expected
Да,
value than
говна.
normal. You're taking
В фильтре
a
его
risk,
нету
though, that it
просто.
could still be junk.
Короче, кусок говна.
Блять, мне это очень нравится.
Its brave
На
leader and
Гэмбл
war
это
master.
клево.
Да.
Danik is interested in specific types of ruined artifacts and wants to trade these from you for a variety of options, such as currency that lets you reroll vendor inventories, logbooks, or artifacts that other Kalgoran
Currency
traders
that let you reroll vendor
You
inventories.
can talk to the traders
Я
in the
правильно
wild,
услышал?
in town,
Да.
or in your hideout. They grant you access to your
Только не сундук для говна,
It's
нет.
like the heist box
Блядь,
in the lockbox
для
from
говна.
League,
Хая.
which give you access
Но
to
Лига
other
мертва,
trade
все.
places also. We're adding the affinity system to these lockers. Among the many relics of the
Affinity
ancient
system
Kalgorans you
будет,
might
всё
find on
нормально.
expedition sites are
Лига
logbooks.
жива?
These ancient books chronicle the locations that their ancestors visited in their exploration of Rayclust. A logbook item can be rolled to have a set of explicit mods, like an endgame map. Each location within the logbook has its own implicit mods, as well as a theme that controls
Удзала,
what types of
Outskirts,
remnants
опять
can be
это
found.
название.
Talk to Danik in your hideout and give him a logbook you have found.
Ебать,
to
там
give you
что за
information
фреймдроп
on
сейчас
the
был?
locations it describes. These are all exotic places that no exiles have ever traveled to before.
А, ну шо Владоса.
Just like
Может
how
быть,
a
может
blighted
быть.
map was one giant blight encounter with no natural monsters, the expedition you go on from a logbook is one giant expedition.
Окей.
Expeditions from logbooks
Ебать,
are not
они
only
механик
different
намешали,
because of their large
блядь.
size, but because there are special objects that you can
Как бы,
interact
блядь,
with
не
using
перемешали.
explosives. For example, trees that contain monsters or items, passageways that reveal chests or bosses, and so on.
О, Дельф.
Speaking of bosses, there are some formidable ones for you to seek out, and a set of valuable new unique items and base types that can only come from your
Чекайте, valuable.
The Kalgoran
Ван Си
are
офер.
from Rayclust, so the items do not have the same defensive properties that ours do. Instead of armor, evasion, and energy shield, they have ward.
Кого
This new
нахуй?
base type has boots that grants ward and can get mods that improve it. The way that ward works is that you have a certain amount of it, and that amount is fully deducted from the first incoming hit that you receive.
Это
Your ward
механик.
is then disabled and takes 5 seconds to re-enable.
Они
At that
даже
point, the
название
damage that you receive is
спиздили.
substantially mitigated in the same way. It's quite a
Это
different
механика
sound,
из
but properly and
эпоха,
works very well
блядь.
in conjunction
Она
with
точно
systems
так
like
же
evasion,
называется.
block, or dodge.
Ну, видишь, Сань.
Точно
As
так
they
же
command enemies you
работает.
unearth in expedition encounters,
Блядь.
Algoran explorers, they also
Поглощай.
use ward rather than traditional defenses. This unique helmet allows you to go all in with ward as a defensive option for your character. It causes all increases to energy shield to affect your ward instead, grants you a bunch of ward and helps it recover faster.
Они даже не тестили это.
This
Это
other
такая
unit
хуйня.
is also on a new base
Блядь,
that
фу.
grants ward instead of other defense
Блядь,
types,
Battle Max
but
прикольно,
properly
кстати.
don't interact with ward. Instead, it prevents you from dealing critical strikes and grants
Но
you
кому нужен
damage,
Battle Max
which
без
adds spell
мульти?
damage equal to the damage of your main hand weapon.
Причем, да,
The new base types and
Не-
uniques I showed you here are
без
just some of the
критов
ones
даже.
that
100% как
discovered
мульт
when
тут
playing
без
Split.
критов.
да, даже без оверлода.
So that's the Expedition League. Each of the developers I've spoken to has liked
Ну, молодец,
Кто
лысый.
Крису губу разбил?
Я ему натираю лысину.
Я кто ему губу разбил, блядь, губу погладь.
Не, не надо. Губу за дело разбили.
Судя по всему, разрабы Last плохо подъехали.
This expansion also promises to
Как мне,
massively
блядь,
shake up the
грустно.
performance.
Мне надо записывать все, что меня разочаровывает. Подожди.
For quite a while now, the way we have approached new skills in Path of Exile expansions is to make a bunch of gems themed around an entirely new build or dramatically augmenting a few existing builds. The blood skills in the Ultimatum expansion are a good example of this. While this approach
Я
is
не скажу,
great
что
for
прям очень
creating
good example,
interesting new
блядь.
builds, it doesn't always affect every
Это
character
экзампл
game-wide.
идеи.
In order to achieve this big metagame shakeup, we've come up with a crazy idea for the Expedition expansion. Adding a gigantic pile of new gems at once.
О, прикольно,
spread
внизу
among
с
as many
косами.
different playstyles as
Смотри,
possible.
там с флаской есть какой-то.
Each of these gems can of course be used by many different classes, but we use the list of 19 ascendancy classes for inspiration when planning these gems.
Сука.
Our goal here is that regardless of which build you're
По
playing,
гему
Да.
для
there'll be
для
new
Да,
каждого.
gems
просто
to
тихо,
Саня, тебя
тихо
слышно?
просто.
Let's go through the 19 new skill and support gems.
Давай,
The
давай.
Earthbreaker support gem can be linked to any slam skill. Upon use, it summons an ancestor totem that uses
Oh,
that
oh.
slam on your behalf. In
Мелита
this
темы!
example, we've created a build that summons multiple
Милитотем.
each build can carry a slam. As you can see,
Хардкоры чухи просто сейчас
well, you get to stay
возносят руки к небу.
This is a powerful option for chieftains in particular due to the various
My finest creation.
ascendancy passive.
Ground Slam тотем.
The Earthbreaker support uses elite slamming totems, and the answer is absolutely.
Балдеж! Балдеж!
As with other
Lip Slam тотем.
Earthbreaker support
Build
also
incoming.
provides a buff to you, granting some increased area of effect with melee skills. Rage Vortex provides a new way to consume your rage, unleashing a whirling vortex that rapidly hits enemies with
Выглядит
close
как
range.
неюзабельная
Gains damage
хуйня.
and area of effect based on how much rage was
посмотрим.
sacrificed. The vortex slows down when enemies survive being hit by it, causing it to deal intense
Они
damage to
запихнули
tough
Квин, этот, блядь,
While you can only
Это
use
этот
one
циклон без
at
тебя.
a time, characters such as
хоть меч этот назывался. Они засунули Dancing Dough в скилл и продают его как скилл, блядь.
Bone Shatter strikes your enemies with a forceful blow. If an enemy is stunned by this attack, a powerful
Что
reflex
за
Бля,
скилл?
вот это я уверен.
the area of
Queen
effect of the shockwave
ZDPS
limits
build
the
incoming.
duration of the stun you inflicted. Each time
Чё
you use
там
Bone
про
Shatter
duration,
against an
ладно?
enemy, you take physical damage yourself and gain a trauma stack. The more stacks you have, the more damage Bone Shatter will deal to both you and your enemies.
Не,
This
ну
self-damage
что-то чистит.
mechanic makes the Juggernaut the ideal
Чё-то
class for
да.
this skill, because
На
they have
уровне
easy
хардкора
access to
зачистка.
lots of armor to mitigate the downside. Also, the Juggernaut has ascendancy passives that grant increased stun duration, which help make sure the shockwave is as large as possible.
Вангую скилл никто не будет юзать абсолютно.
Я буду.
While you carry the Defiance banner, it increases the armor and evasion of nearby allies while reducing the critical strike chance of nearby enemies.
Нормально.
О,
Stages with
reduce
carried near
chance.
enemies and can be placed on the ground to enhance its effects. When the Defiance banner is placed, it inflicts a taunt on enemies for a duration based on the number
Это
of
только я не понимаю, что он делает.
Это Blade Flurry с баннером просто.
Enemies affected by this taunt also deal less damage to all targets.
Ниндзя.
The
Охуеть.
next new skill is Shield Crush, which
Oh.
swipes your shield towards enemies and sends out forceful waves of damage based on the stats of your shield.
О, щиты,
Shield
блядь.
throw.
So while Shield Crush is great against groups, it's also effective against single targets and can be used alongside
это можно
shield
на
charges
тотем
with effective
засунуть?
shield throw. We've improved both of
Балдеж.
these skills
Это не
so that the
слэм
overall
скилл.
aggressive shield build is
А,
more
он
powerful.
слэм скиллы, точно.
Нахуй ему меч в руке. Статстик?
The new Behead support gem can only support strike skills and is basically like a mini headhunter. When a supported strike kills a rare enemy, you'll steal one of its modifiers. Obviously, this gem can't be as crazy as the full headhunter experience, so it comes with some restrictions. Stolen modifiers can persist for 20 seconds, and slaying another rare enemy will replace the modifier you have active.
Но только один,
The
окей.
Behead support gem also grants you more damage against enemies on low life. In conjunction with the Slayer's Bane of Legends Ascendancy passive, this bonus really embraces the execution theme of the Behead support.
Я понял. Они сели и такие, блин, нас постоянно ругают.
Блядь. Хочу.
Они спиздили скилл Доминуса.
Хочу, слышь.
Они просто
когда
такие,
дохуя.
блядь, они реально, они сидели.
Ну-ка, ну-ка, ну-ка.
Блядь.
They'll start shooting immediately and will generally target the closest enemies. While this behavior is usually great, sometimes you want fine control over what your ballistas will fire at. The focused ballista support gem causes your ballistas to pick the same targets as you, and they will only fire when you fire your
Направляемые
own
турельки.
weapon.
О, ты типа сам
It also
юзаешь.
makes the ballistas
А
fire
так
a
вот.
lot
Блядь,
faster than
это
their
будет
enemies
стоить целого
would. The
камня.
support gem allows you to
Серьезно?
effectively focus fire
Ну
on
так 2
specific
шестилинка можно
enemies
юзнуть.
and bosses. Explosive concoction is quite a novel skill. It introduces several new
Хуета.
concepts that haven't been explored with skills before. Here you can see the pathfinder
Нормально,
throwing an
гранаты из
explosive
террарии взяли.
projectile at monsters. Firstly,
Значит, будет
you may
хуйня.
notice that the
Они говорят,
pathfinder isn't
раньше не
holding
тестили,
weapons.
не было
This is
такого,
because
значит, хуйня.
explosive concoction is the very first ranged skill that can and must be used unarmed. It's also the first
Ranged
skill that
unarmed.
interacts with the benefits
Unarmed?
provided by
Да.
your flasks. When you throw your explosive
Unarmed
concoction onto a
ranged?
targeted enemy,
Да.
it deals fire damage and uses available
Блядь, это
damage
фласки
from
из
your
Диабло,
really
подожди.
satisfying flasks to grant bonuses based on your
Вот
flask
это
damage.
зеленая, желтая, гремучая, блядь, Диабло 2 была такая. Ты тоже брал ее вместо оружия и кидал, блядь. Как дурак.
Охуеть, файнали. Они решили подобрать approach к фласкам. Не починить фласки, они заставят нажимать их, блядь. Крис, пожалуйста, сделай активируемые автоматические фласки. Ха-ха,
Видите,
кейборд, go,
типа, они рисуют
Ну-ка, ну-ка,
то
ну-ка.
Ascendancy,
Стой.
справа
Ага.
сверху, на которые они опирались, когда делали скилл.
Это спиздили, мне кажется, откуда-то.
То есть они говорят, что вот, блядь, грубо говоря, они такие, бля, нас постоянно обвиняют, что наши скиллы не работают. Мы теперь специально будем для Ascendancy скиллы делать.
Кого?
У автобомбер скилл.
Опа. Опа. Взрывчики.
Ну,
Кайф, мне нравится, как он выглядит.
Раньше был траппер, теперь ты сам себе траппер.
Прикинь, лежит Battle Fate и не прожимается.
да. Атак мины.
Вы думали, атак тотем это все, что мы можем показать, да?
Нет, это не атак мины.
Атак трапы.
Это единственная атака, которую они могут.
Ну,
Это не
атак
разные.
трапа.
Это не... Ну,
Не атак,
Трапа, которая атакует.
который
Ладно,
атакует твоим
хорошо.
оружием, да? А то так спиды скейлится, ну да.
Куда с косами, да?
Хуя себе.
знаете, в какой игре я видел такого миньона?
Это персона референс?
Вам сказать, где я его видел, или вы сами догадаетесь?
Есть несколько вариантов.
Охуеть.
Это тоже в эпохе абсолютно по смыслу и содержанию такой же есть миньон.
Ну бахать он красиво.
Анимешник.
Так, Это еще напоминает из этого, я не это было про какой-то... Тоже был парень с косой. Блять.
Patch notes, man.
Мне почему-то кажется, что так дизайнить скиллы — это ошибка.
Это стил? Нет? Или это колд? Бля, выглядит плюс-минус интересно. Не понял, это Frostblade, только спел.
This Inquisitor is using the new Battle Mage's Cry skill,
О,
which
Саня!
taunts nearby enemies and exerts your subsequent attacks.
Смотри, какой скилл классный.
Spell on your next melee hit. Here you can see that taunting enemies with Battle Mage's Cry and using consecrated path
Это конкпас?
Это конкпас.
exerted, triggering Firestorm to rain down on those enemies.
Это...
In
Сука.
order to assist with scaling both attack and
Custom
spell
hit,
damage,
finally.
the buff this
Custom slam.
that your spell damage apply to your attacks. This property is usually only available on
Spell
wands and
damage
certain
apply
unique
to
items.
pass.
Ну это какой-то край,
Mana
слышь?
bond is a somewhat
Да, я
unusual
понял.
design that its source of power relies on your current mana. Upon use,
О,
it creates a rune that
понятно.
explodes at a location you're targeting. This explosion can either deal more damage or cover a larger area depending on the state
Mana
of your
bond.
mana. The more mana that's missing from your mana pool, the more damage mana bond will deal, as it converts a percentage of your missing mana
Ну
into
понятно,
added
опять
lightning.
архимагия
The
все
more full your mana
ваншотают.
pool is, the more area the explosion will cover. This means that being adept at managing your mana pool becomes highly advantageous. For example, having slightly higher mana while clearing a map provides greater clear speed, but when fighting tougher enemies, having a lower current mana is better.
Ну все, архимаги опять выигрывают.
Блин, ваншотят боссов
Absolution has been
приходят.
designed for Guardians as a spell version of Dominating Blow. Absolution deals a damaging shockwave in a targeted area. When it kills an enemy, it summons a Sentinel of Absolution, which also deals damage by casting Absolution itself.
Ёбнешься.
The Sentinels also periodically cast a larger version of Absolution on the cooldown. While the Sentinels version of Absolution can't summon
Бля,
any more enemies,
обалдёж.
they are a powerful army to fight against. Spectral Helix throws a spectral copy of your melee weapon, which spirals outwards from you, dealing damage to any enemies.
Ну это же...
The design of
Это
this
же
skill
вау.
is always
Да,
one
это
of
же
the
вау,
best
блядь,
skills.
Spectral
We thought it was a really
Pro.
fun idea for a skill, but because of the limitations caused by the soul gathering requirements of
Я бы
Valve,
сказал, что это паладин
it wasn't
Хаммер из
possible to
Диабло
use
2,
Valve
но
Spectral
ладно.
О, да, согласен.
Now that Spectral Helix can live up to this purpose, we've reworked Valve's Spectral Throw, which we'll reveal closer to
Ну
release.
Помните же Диабло?
One
что-то...
of the other issues that Valve's Spectral Throw has is
Что-то
that it doesn't work very
как-то
well in
не
indoors areas.
впечатляет.
However, Spectral Helix improves
Особенно выбрали место, чтобы охуенно показать, да?
also bounce off of walls and proceed to hit enemies.
Он баунсит,
Баунс
типа.
оф оф
Ну, пусть
вол.
баунсит.
Рикошетит от стенок, да.
Ой. Все занерфлено, игра усложнена.
О, он знает, что такое поваркой? Тихо. Это мне интересно. Мне интересно, они знают, что они делают?
Они
Окей.
знают, что они делают.
Да.
Стоп, подожди.
График
Не, ну
Power
ладно.
Creep.
Просто как они решат эту проблему, мне интересно, потому что вот это будет прям показательным для меня, обезьяны они или нет.
Crafting, character systems, item acquisition opportunities, and new skills for player power to grow tenfold since the game has been out. And tenfold is roughly what we measure the increase in player power to be. We may nerf the most out-of-hand cases every launch, but we're only reducing them back down to close to the new baseline. The average Path of Exile character gets more and more powerful. While we do
Да.
occasionally add new endgame challenges that are appropriate for the current power level of top characters, the rest of the game just becomes relatively easier and easier. Some games handle this by just endlessly and exponentially scaling monster life and damage to counteract player power growth. Eventually, the numbers get too large and you need to crunch them all down again. This is a really cheap approach and makes the game feel like a treadmill where the developers are just turning a knob as they hand you new power.
Мы так не делаем, говорит.
Он прав, нет, он
We
прав,
don't want to
пока
treat
что
Path of
все.
Exile like that, and hence our solutions are more complicated. At the same time, one of the issues is
They're
that
too
players will
complicated,
always
I would
pick the
say.
most powerful way of interacting with any game system, even when that's not actually fun to play. This leads to behaviors like Flask Piano, or the way that everyone just picks support gems that basically add pure damage. As game designers, it is our responsibility to make sure that the most powerful behaviors are also the most fun to engage with. With that in mind, the balance changes that we are making in Expedition are far-reaching and
Блять, красивый кинетик бласт.
Our goal is not to just nerf specific builds, but to improve the game, its challenge, and to make sure that people want to pick fun build choices. Anyone who played Path of Exile during its closed beta 9 years ago can attest to how challenging the campaign was to play through.
Охренеть, конечно.
Я помню.
Что ж там будет?
Рос против Оука.
They were careful around rowers because a couple of unlucky charges could outright kill them. Trying to kill a Goatman Shaman while he had Molten Shell up was a pretty terrible. Nowadays, however, the game is a lot easier. We added level 2 and 4 support gems without increasing the difficulty of the game to compensate at all. Modern League mechanics shower the player in rare items from early levels, and we didn't make the game any harder in response. In fact, it's very interesting to compare the difficulty of League content with that of the base game. For a few years now, we've been shipping difficult leagues where monster life and damage values are a lot higher than the regular monsters that players fight between those league encounters. Players enjoy League content because it's challenging. They also told us they really enjoyed the Path of Exile 2 demo at ExileCon, and it was tuned to be almost punitive in terms of difficulty. One thing we learned from building that demo was that it's okay for some monsters to be able to run 20 to 40% faster than players. In Path of Exile 1's first act, there isn't a single monster that moves faster than the player's default movement speed. We are rebalancing the campaign to be challenging. So far, we have focused mostly on Act 1, but with each coming expansion, we'll be extending this further. Our plan is that within a year or so, we'll have reviewed or touched every single monster in the game. While this additional challenge probably won't stop our most skilled players easily dominating the campaign,
я прощаю Криса.
Верик, ему так нужно было твое прощение. Он спать не мог.
Я ему отмашку даю, типа, ладно, выкатывай, говно.
Я поиграю, да? Даже, блять, этот...
Я играть не буду.
Даже пак куплю, сказал. Не, это... Все, ребят, нету этого, ничего, это нет, не бывает такого.
With 5 such flasks equipped, the correct behavior was to spam the 1 to 5 keys repeatedly to keep all the flasks constantly up without any downtime.
Да ну нахуй!
This piano playstyle was popular enough that players were improvising devices to hit all of those keys at once. Spamming the same set of keys repeatedly to get a powerful set of buffs that rival the power you get from your entire set of equipped items is not a fun game mechanic. It's unbalanced and certainly isn't nice on your wrist. It prevents us from balancing the game well for players who aren't smashing their keyboard constantly and seriously restricts the design space we can use on flasks. In addition, certain unique flasks completely outclass other ones in terms of raw damage output. It was pretty clear to us that Path of Exile will be a lot better if we did some serious work on flasks to make sure that their incentives were aligned with fun.
Я не думаю, что их работа уже готова. Они просто говорят, что мы знаем, что есть проблемы, нет?
Flasks and unique flasks have been rebalanced. Expect a lot less permanent power.
Заменим все фласки на одну фласку.
That provide raw defense or raw power are the ones with the biggest nerfs. Some flasks have been selectively buffed a bit if they were underpowered or less popular.
О, 20
In the Expedition expansion, there are now 3 ways that you can use flasks. You can either continue to use the rebalanced ones the traditional way, or you can apply one of the 2 new types of currency items to flasks. The Instilling Orb and Enkindling Orb drop as part of the regular drop pool from regular monsters and chests. The Instilling Orb will cause a flask to be used automatically upon a specific condition.
Стой.
For example, when charges become full or when you become affected by Ignite.
Автоюзы.
This means that in the cases where you would previously want to time a specific
Она слабее будет.
you can now rely on
Она
it
слабее будет.
automatically, with the only trade-off being that it may consume charges that you otherwise wouldn't intend it to. There are a variety of different conditions, and a random one is enchanted onto your flask, overwriting the others.
Вы видели по модам, что они сделали? Больше не будет анти-эйлмент фласок.
Так они в имплисите почти считают.
Нет, так они типа снимают. Это значит, что фласки, слава богу, не такие сильные, потому что если у тебя в имплисте это, то типа, ну... Просто ты видел, там было не в имплисте, а строка remove soul burning on use. Это значит... Не-не-не, про строку, которая removed burning.
Ага.
Вот, он говорит сейчас.
Охуеть.
Note that we have rebalanced element mitigation in general, so there aren't a few options that completely outclass the rest.
Типа это не анти, она не действует во время всего фласк
Да,
эффекта.
я
Она
понял,
один раз
она снимает,
ремувает.
да.
Она делает тебя иммунным, если ты снимаешь его. То есть ты снимаешь, на тебя еще какое-то время будет иммунитет висеть.
Но заранее не можешь поражать.
Заранее нельзя, да?
So now there's a lot more strategy involved with flask use. Flasks don't gain as many
Охуенно.
charges, so are a little
Это прям то,
harder
что
to
Зизаран в
constantly
видосе
spam,
просил.
and aren't designed to provide such a powerful slew of permanent buffs. But you can control which provide larger than normal effects and which
Блять,
trigger
это, конечно.
as part of your build.
Я excited.
Кино без танк, кстати, к корундам.
Рарики.
Блять, голд фласка, ёб твою мать.
Всегда будет выжимать, да?
Я буду
There are
жать.
gems that grant huge multiplicative damage bonuses, and there are gems that do a
Yes.
bunch of stuff you don't really care about. When you're building a character, by far the correct choice is just to stack on all the multiplicative damage
Ну да,
bonuses
more
and
damage,
ignore
more
all
damage.
interesting utility support gems, because their opportunity cost is just too high. We're reducing the damage bonuses on the support gems that are clearly just about huge damage boosts, and trying to give them impactful and appropriate downsides. For example, the controlled destruction support gem now penalizes critical strikes multiplicatively.
Вау.
Overall, this works out to a total
Ёбнешься.
of somewhere around 20%, potentially as high as 40% damage reduction for a character using a fully 6-linked skill with entirely damaged support gems.
А как
There's
жить?
much less impact for characters that use utility support gems or those who didn't have a 6-link setup. This
Как
achieves
мы и
Все,
забыли.
теперь сосут не
Firstly,
только
the
те,
gap
кто
between good
страдали
and bad
хуйней, а
support
все.
gems has been narrowed, creating more interesting build opportunities. Secondly, player damage output in the endgame is reduced, which is a goal for this balance pass. As I mentioned, we want to iteratively
Ну,
restore
спасибо,
challenge
блядь.
to Path of Exile.
Не, ну значит я точно
есть-
сам билд делаю.
то есть
Ну типа.
Люди, которые сами себе билд хуярят, еле-еле, блядь, ковыряют мовенку нахуй, не считая абсолютных абузеров, блядь, будут не убивать мовенку.
А абузеры тоже не будут убивать.
А абузер не, абузеры также будут, блядь.
Так, а можно для людей, которые без звука это смотрят?
Меньше урона будет в игре.
Они, короче, беспокоятся, что самая оптимальная стратегия, когда ты подбираешь...
Тихо, охуенно нерв сейчас будет. Кокеры сосат.
In fact, sometimes it now costs more than casting the gem by hand. Thankfully, though, this isn't very hard with well-constructed characters. Certain support gems that were originally disabled from supporting triggered skills, like Arcane Surge, can now be used to support them. Builds that use triggered skills are some of the most interesting characters in Path of Exile, and they are often the best representation of the craziness.
То есть триггеры скиллы теперь будут есть ману?
We're confident that they are just
Да,
as
всю,
powerful
которая
as
потребовалась
we
на
have
каст
more interesting
пальчиком,
И может быть, говорит, даже больше.
skills.
Да, может перебить.
Бля.
Я думаю, будет, как обычно, больше и с левелом
тихо,
меньше.
тихо.
As you know, most interaction with monster behavior is essentially bypassed if you're using an extremely effective
Dash
movement
понятно.
skill. This is okay if you're specialized deeply into customizing that skill, but it's currently the default state for any character if you use Flame Dash,
Похоже,
Smoke
что
Mine,
его
or
нет.
Dash without any
Да,
further
флейм
investment.
дэш, все.
These skills have been rebalanced to be more in line with other movement skills. These are not huge numeric nerfs, but do mean that there is scope for improving the performance of the skills by
Ладно,
specializing
на самом
around
деле,
them.
в чем был баланс, потому что как бы они
There
все
are
были
many
чисто
other balance
уникальны.
changes in 3.15, which you can read about in the Balance Manifesto and patch notes next week. To be honest,
Я
there
буду
are a lot
очень
of nerfs.
внимательно
We
манифест читать.
completely understand that this level of change will make some people nervous.
Я всегда читаю, сука.
Actively combating
Не-не-не,
power creep
прям
and
еще
fixing game
более. Я
systems
буду
that haven't been
задумываться.
working the way we intended them to.
I think that the metagame of Expedition is going to be fascinating. The reduction of overall player power combined with all
За
of the
power creep
opportunities
ты
for
сейчас
new
губу
skills
разбили.
and flask system changes
Понятно, да.
should create entirely new
Челик говорит,
skills than we've previously seen.
Знаешь, у него
You
там
guys are
тестер
always
говорит, ой,
surprising us with what you
я
do.
выбил Awakened Control Destruction.
Мне
А Крис,
кажется,
Крис такой,
его-
ой, а он, блядь, слабее в
Его,
мультирас.
походу, писали. У него еще на
Вот, я
шее.
этого... Да,
Так,
да,
тихо,
блядь.
тихо,
Да,
самая главная
блядь.
новость.
We had a running joke in the office that our fast development speed meant that we could
Вот из
probably add
рояля.
Battle Royale mode to
Рояли
Path
в
of Exile
кустах.
in one day.
А, я понял, они, блядь, нахуй вместо лиги разрабатывали эту хуйню.
Exactly that. We pulled a few developers together and
Кайф.
asked them to spend no more than one workday each on their contributions to this new mode.
Я обалдел, пока
Мне
играл.
нравилось,
Не,
мне
ну хоть
нравилось.
какое-то
тоже.
ПВП, типа.
Да, Сань, ты пропустил многое, на самом деле.
Да, у меня на старом аккаунте несколько чекин-димеров даже было.
It was a quick and dirty job, so we only left the game mode turned on for a couple of days. It went pretty well considering it had no custom balance whatsoever. After April 1st, we turned the mode off and forgot all about it. But the community did not forget. In fact, they've been
Это было
working
кайфно.
constantly to urge us to bring it back. But that wouldn't be easy, as to actually make it a decent experience would require a lot of custom builds, playtesting, and feature implementation.
Battle Royale в
A few
PoE,
months ago,
он
Да,
был
это
we
классно.
всегда
decided to do exactly that.
в моем
Path of
сердечке.
Exile Royale will return today. In fact, immediately after the QA section of this live stream.
Oh.
We're going to run it for the weekend as a test.
Да,
and then turn it
так
on
было
every
ж, было
weekend
ж.
Нет,
на
так
стриме,
будет
да.
сейчас.
after Expedition's
Да?
launch.
Ёб твою
Через
мать.
47 минут.
Ёбаный в рот.
Его, они типа сейчас играют?
Я не буду ночью играть, я завтра буду.
Я не буду ночью играть тоже.
Но завтра я буду играть.
Я буду играть ночью, потому что мне завтра на работу.
Which didn't have interesting options for characters that rarely got to level 10. It also used all of our skill gems and unique items as is, when many of the interesting ones were way too high level for these super low level characters to ever find. We've made a completely new Royale-specific passive skill
Покчамп.
that has everything you need to
Ой,
upgrade
это
that
за
skill character
херня.
for high-speed PvP combat.
Не, ну вообще как бы
Features
да.
approximately 90 new custom notable passives,
Чё это
a
за
special
херня?
new left-aligned window
Дерево для
so you can
батл
see
рояля.
your surroundings while
А,
Оно
upgrading
типа,
простое,
где
но
ты-
оно такое должно быть.
Да, где ты,
Хорошо.
дай бог, 10 уровней поднимешь.
Any of the tree starting locations, regardless of which character class you picked.
О, нихуя.
We've
Ah,
created
блядь.
low-level versions of around 50 iconic skill gems, 20 support gems, and over 70 unique items.
Пиздец,
These
кайф.
Абисус.
qualified items are appropriate for low-level play and include quite a few things that are usually only available at substantially higher character levels in the core game. The whole island
Пиздец,
has
это
been
классно,
updated.
блядь.
We've made the terrain more varied.
Они, понял, не замаскировали лигу.
Fights feel different depending on where they take place. You'll encounter flask troves, which provide charges for your flasks. These troves periodically replenish themselves, so expect a lot of combat to occur around them. There are many other small improvements you'll notice when you play Royale, such as an improved spectator mode, improved leaderboard, and ability to pillage items from players through a special interface rather
Oh.
than having them clutter the ground. You don't need to delete and remake your character for each game, as you could just reuse your old one, which is automatically reset to level 1.
Тоже круто, кстати.
Your prize for coming first on a Royale event is this new Roa Dinner hideout decoration. It's a bit like a challenge league totem as it grows more impressive as you win more events.
Ой, бля.
Royale is available to play
Кайф.
as soon as
Рикошет
the
скилла?
session concludes in
Ты
about
видел?
45 minutes. So patch your Path of Exile client, and when we're done with the Q&A, log in and click to join the Royale event on the bottom right of the screen. For more detailed information on how the mode works, check out the news
Охуенно,
post we
блядь.
just made on pathofexile.com.
Господи.
We're running the event from today over the weekend. If you don't get a chance to
Новая
play
лига
Royale over the
выглядит
next few
прекрасно.
days, we're
Да,
running it
милишная
every
чуха,
weekend
конечно.
after the next Expedition's launch weekend for the next few months. Please check it out and let us know your feedback. Keep an eye on our news.
Ой, саппортер
Tier one
паки.
Finer
родине.
details of what's coming in Expedition, including the full patch notes on Tuesday, US time. We'll move on
Чё-то
to the
я,
Q&A
блядь,
shortly to answer your burning questions, but
переживаю.
first, let's have a look at the new supporter packs that are available right now to celebrate the launch of Expedition and help fund ongoing development of Path of Exile, Path of Exile 2, and
Я
special
боюсь
modes
погать
like Rogue.
просто. Понимаете,
Да,
я
и
знаю
Гукс,
эту
Гукс не
компанию.
смотрит, так что нарыгали. Ой, блядь, красивый.
Просто типа,
Да,
я
хороший.
погну, блядь, а они сделают хуйню.
Ну, это прикольно, но я не фанат.
The Soulkeeper series
Это
comes with an
охуенно.
exclusive pet
Крылышки.
Портал
Seer
красивый.
series and exclusive set of wings. On top of the traditional small and
Крылышки с
medium-sized
молниями.
supporter packs that are consistent with ones we've released in the past, we're also adding an optional new third tier for each series. This new tier includes an exclusive apparition portal
Добро
effect and
пожаловать
slightly better ratio
в
of points per dollar spent. The introduction of these new packs should give
Ой,
you
ой,
more
красивый
options for a
портал.
combination of each pack series you purchase. Like always, it's possible to upgrade between pack tiers within each series. Thank you so much for your support. Purchases of these supporter packs are the only thing that fund the ongoing development of Path of Exile, as well as expansions like Expedition, Path of Exile Royale.
Должны
Ну,
были что-то давать
неплохо,
за эту
Titles we
блядь.
showed you today are already
Нет,
live
без
on
дропов
YouTube
было.
for you to link to your
Просто.
friends in case they
Бля.
missed the live stream.
Пидорасы.
Было.
We'd love to
Да.
have as many of you as possible joining our expedition next week.
Короче,